Welcome to Core Diagnostic. Participants will learn the purpose of the diagnostic and how to administer core measures online. Chandler has a literacy screener and diagnostic process, as you see on the right. This allows us to understand the flow from administering the screener, which identifies students' risk levels, which is the tool that we use as DIBBLES, on down to administering the diagnostic assessment through Tier 2 interventions and also progress monitoring. The screener and diagnostic team administers both the DIBBLES and the core diagnostic. The purpose of the diagnostic is to administer it to students that are at risk according to their DIBBLES composite. The reds and yellows, those are our students that are scoring well below benchmark and below benchmark. The diagnostic identifies the targeted subskills a student does or does not possess, and then teachers use that data to determine the student's stop skill, their starting point for intervention. After 2 to 3 weeks of instruction, the teacher will check for mastery using the core progress monitoring forms. Information on the progress monitoring forms will be provided in a separate training for teachers. Once mastered, the student moves forward to the next skill, and data will drive the small group instruction. It is important to note that the goal of the diagnostic for core and also core progress monitoring is mastery. We are looking for students to be accurate and also have automaticity, which means they are able to respond to the word as a whole word the first read. No self-corrections or sounding out. The reason that this is different than DIBBLES is because DIBBLES is a screener identifying risk levels, where a diagnostic is our measure to be able to quickly identify where the student needs focus in their instruction, whether it is in phonics skills, for instance, for accuracy, or if it is really understanding how to continuously blend and begin blending the first time instead of always sounding out, therefore providing automaticity. More information will be provided on that at the end of our training today. Now let's take a look at what this process looks like throughout the year. We begin by assessing with DIBBLES for beginning of year, BOY. This is done by the screener diagnostic team. Data is collected and we identify the students that are at risk. Students that are at risk then need the core diagnostic. This helps to identify the skills to target for these students. Once those skills are identified, the teacher then starts intervention. This becomes a cycle to where they provide the skill-based instruction in a small group setting on that needed skill. They then, every 2 to 3 weeks, provide phonics progress monitoring to identify the skills mastered and areas that need more attention within that skill. This is done every 2 to 3 weeks because some skills need a longer amount of time of instruction while others need a shorter amount. This continues throughout the rest of the semester. In addition, we have DIBBLES progress monitoring. DIBBLES progress monitoring comes in 2 times during the first semester, and during that time we are looking at how students are growing within their skills when they're applied to overarching, such as nonsense word fluency or oral reading fluency. The measure that is identified to be progress monitored is selected by the teacher, and it should align with the skill that they are working on within their core phonics progress monitoring, their intervention group instruction. Then towards the middle of the year, we have our DIBBLES middle of the year testing window. Students are assessed again with specific measures, and then those students that are identified as at risk based on that DIBBLES assessment is then administered the core diagnostic. From there, the teachers look at those scores and are able to place students in small groups for intervention needs. The cycle repeats to where the students then receive the intervention and instruction on that specific skill, and then they are assessed with core phonics progress monitoring every 2 to 3 weeks as they make gains in mastery. From there, we also have an additional DIBBLES progress monitoring required test window, and at that time, the teacher then looks to see if the student is making adequate growth within the progress monitoring from DIBBLES. At the end of the year, we assess with DIBBLES one more time to see if students have made that benchmark, and again, we can assess for core for the diagnostic to see if students have specific skills that are needed to be mastered. The end of the year core diagnostic is optional. Some sites choose to use core diagnostic at the end of the year to either focus in on growth and areas of need for a student that is involved in the MTSS process, or sometimes they use that core diagnostic data for summer learning or other additional needs. This data that is then collected will flow year to year because now that core is online, we are able to house the data historically under the student. The steps needed to access the core diagnostic are as follows. For test administration, the tester will access the link and administer core measures. Links are found on our assessment webpage. We will show you in just a moment. After the tester administers the test, the data will then upload to Tableau. Teachers then access, analyze, and act on the data from Tableau. How do I access the core? From the Chandler website, select Teaching and Learning in the top right corner. Then go to Assessments. Once you're on this new web page, you will scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page under District Assessments. You will then select Universal Literacy Screener and Diagnostic. From this location, you'll be using the top right corner, Staff Assessment Resources. This will ask you to sign in through your Microsoft credentials. Use the same login and password as you use daily to log into your computer. Once you're on the new Literacy Screener and Diagnostic webpage for staff, you will be able to scroll down to the section specific to Core Diagnostic. From there, you will be able to see a tile that says Core Diagnostic. This tile will be used to access the online assessment platform. Additionally, in this area, you will also find the student forms that the students will use while they're taking these assessments. Most sites will have these printed ahead of time for the team. Once you launch the core diagnostic using the tile that we just showed you, you will be asked to enter some basic session details. Tester will enter their first and last name, the student ID, and the student first and last name. This is important to have this information reported correctly. Data reports are imported to Tableau using the student ID. This is a 6-digit number and it does not include the S in the front. Please only include the digits that are included in this USD ID student number. If there is an issue where perhaps the tester transposed numbers within the student ID, we collect information on the student's first and last name. This is only if we need to cross-check and make sure that the right student data got to the right place. It is helpful for the team during testing time to have a list of students that will need to test that includes their CUSD ID. These ID numbers can be provided through Infinite Campus rosters, and they will also be provided once we have established reports in Tableau. After completing this training, you will have the opportunity to practice, and we want to make sure that we provide that opportunity so that you can get used to the scoring guidelines and being able to interact with the screen. When you are practicing with the core diagnostic, please make sure that you use demo, D-E-M-O, in all test session detail fields as shown here in front of you. Once your practice is complete and you get used to using the forms, make sure that you close out the tab, clicking the X at the top of your screen instead of submitting the work. That way, we won't have a lot of student records being submitted that are not needed. Again, just make sure that you type in demo in all the student fields, tester fields when you are practicing. That way it allows you to be able to practice and also allows our data flow to not be backed up. When you are on the next screen, you will be able to see a table. It'll ask you to review the diagnostic required measures per grade level and time of year. Depending on what time of year you are testing, you will be able to look for the student's grade level and the associated tests that are required, depending on if it's the beginning of the year or the middle of the year or end of year. You will use this table to then scroll down and select the test that you wish to administer to the student. Additional guidance. Use this if-then chart to assist with decisions during testing. This image is embedded in the test after the core requirements table that we just saw, and it is embedded before selecting your measures. This will help support you in making some decisions depending on what the student needs. Tip. It is helpful to have reviewed past test history prior to testing so that you can identify the correct starting point. If students have already mastered specific measures, then we don't need to reassess them. Core guidance. Let's take a look at the if-then statements. If the student previously mastered the required skill, then don't reassess the same skill unless there is a data need. Move to the next needed skill. If the student reads only 0 to 2 words correct per line for parts E through K, then administer one additional measure. If the same results, such as discontinue, then stop the remaining tests. The tester navigates back to the measure selection and unchecks the tasks that will not be used. We will go into this discontinue rule as we get to the scoring guidance. Additional data, so if additional data is needed, for example, you have a third grade student who's in the MTSS process and they discontinue from parts E and F, the tester may choose to be able to assess the student in consonants and vowels. So it is up to the discretion of the team or the teacher to be able to use more measures than what is required depending on the student need. The next one, if tester selects multiple tests but does not administer all of them, then the student will receive full credit as a default. To avoid this, the tester must navigate back and uncheck unused tests, then progress forward again to submit the test. This is a very important step because we want to make sure that we record accurate information. So again, if the tests that you have selected are not used, you need to navigate to the beginning of the test, uncheck them, and then move again forward. If the tester does not select Submit at the end of the test, then the student results are not sent to Tableau. You would want to submit an assessment help ticket immediately if you cannot find the tab that has the core results. And then if you are able to find that tab, then you would submit from there. If not, then contact the assessment team to help. If the tester entered incorrect student ID and did not follow the scoring rules or any other test irregularity occurred, again, you would want to make sure that you reach out to the assessment team. Once a test is submitted, then they may not be reopened. Therefore, we ask that you submit the assessment help ticket with the student's information, test name, form, grade, student, tester, and description of what happened, and also the requested action so that we can help support you. As you scroll down the screen in administering this assessment, after the additional guidance table, you will see where you get to select the test that you will administer. The tester will select the needed measures for that time of year and then select the forward navigation arrow. Again, this is where you would go back to this page if you don't end up administering all the assessments that are checked. Please, throughout the assessment, use the back and forward arrows as needed. Now we will dive a little bit deeper into some of our assessments. Let's take a look at one of the phonological segmentation assessments. At the very top of your screen, when you are using the assessment platform, you will see the directions. For instance, for each test item, select whether the student response was correct or incorrect based on how the student responded to each prompt. For the phonological segmentation assessments, you will need at least 8 blocks. Use manipulatives that are available to you, such as blocks or chips, and have them in a row in front of the student. Phonological segmentation, Part A, allows the child to be able to identify how we segment words that are in a sentence. Each of the phonological segmentation measures begins with a practice. The teacher first begins, "What is something you like to eat?" And the student may respond, "Pizza," or whatever their choice is. The teacher then says, "I'm going to use these blocks to show the sentence, 'You like pizza,'" or you may insert the student's name. Teacher then uses 3 blocks and says each of the words as he or she places each of the blocks on the table. "You like pizza." The teacher then points to each block in order and asks, "What is this one?" And the student then says, "You." She then points to the middle block, and this one, "Like," and this block, "Pizza." Once the student understands the directions, then the teacher will begin the test. Now we are going to use these blocks to show me "Father called." The student will then slide the blocks to show "Father called." So 2 blocks will be in front of the student. When that happens, the tester will then score it as correct and move on to the next question. "What time is it?" The student will then move, "What time is it?" 4 blocks, and then the tester will mark it correct. If the student does not move the correct number of blocks and does not segment by each word in the sentence, then the tester will mark it as incorrect. We follow the same scoring patterns as we move throughout the test and then use the navigation arrow to move on. Now let's take a look at the phonics parts A through D. This example in front of us is part C for consonant sounds. However, all parts A through D are similar. They will all start with scoring rules at the top. The tester reviews and refers back to these scoring guidelines throughout testing. Additional prompts are provided to use as needed, and the tester will read the bold directions to the student. As the student responds, the tester will follow along with the student and tap or with a mouse click items based on scoring guidelines. If the tester has a hard time selecting the letters by using a touch screen, you may also zoom in on your device if you need more space. Once testing is complete, the tester will select the forward arrow to move forward. Let's take a closer look at the scoring guidelines for Part C consonant sounds. The tester reads the directions. Look at these letters. Can you tell me the sound each letter makes? Scoring Rule 1, correct response. The student provides the correct sound. We do not mark the record form. The default is all items correct. Scoring Rule 2, incorrect response. Student says ba instead of d. Student provides the incorrect sound. We tap once to mark red. Scoring Rule 3, self-correct. Student says n. Student self-corrects. Tap twice to mark green. Scoring Rule 4. If the student is unable to say the sound for 3 or more consecutive letters, we can give them a prompt. Let's try an example. The student says d, j, m, t. The tester will then say, look at all of the letters and tell me which sounds you do know. The student then responds, t. Therefore, the T and P are not marked, but the tester then marks all remaining letters as incorrect. The tester then moves forward to the next screen. Scoring Rules Part D Vowel Sounds. The student form in front of the student will look different than your screen. The student form will only have the vowels. The tester then asks the student, can you tell me the sounds of each letter? Note that these sounds do not have to be responded to in the same order as long and short as the tester sees on their screen. As long as the student produces the different sounds, it is marked as correct. Scoring Rule 1, correct response. If the student provides the correct sound, the tester does not mark the record form. Scoring Rule 2, incorrect response. If the student provides an incorrect sound, then we tap once to mark it red. Scoring Rule 3, self-correct. If the student self-corrects, we tap twice to mark it green. So if the student for the letter O said O, we can mark it as self-correct, green. Scoring Rule 4. If the student names the letter, count it as the long vowel. Then ask, can you tell me another sound for the letter? And the student should be able to name the short vowel sound. If they do, then we mark it as correct. If they are unable to respond with the short vowel sound, it is marked as incorrect. Scoring rules for Part E is the same as Part E through L. First, the tester will read the directions. I want you to read each line of words aloud. Start here and go across the page. Be sure to read each word as a whole word. Put your finger under the first word. You may begin. The tester will follow the same scoring rules shown previously for correct responses, incorrect responses, self-correct, and 3-second hesitation. If the student cannot read 2 or more real words correct in each line, do not administer the line of pseudo words. That's the third line. Important, if this occurs, the tester must tap the last line as incorrect, making all of the 5 words on the bottom row red. If the student can read 2 or more real words correct in each line, then the tester will read the directions for the pseudo words, the third line, and continue progressing throughout the test. After collecting student responses, the tester will provide additional information for the teacher by answering the following. For the section above, the student mostly sounded out or read as whole word. This helps provide additional information to the teacher on if they need to work on automaticity. If the test is discontinued, the student will test one more measure. If the same results occur, then the tester may stop testing. Tester will need to uncheck the test not administered from the very first screen, measure selection. Use the back arrows to go back to the beginning of the test and uncheck the measures that you will not be testing. Then use the forward arrow to go all the way through the test again to then submit. Before we submit, there is one last screen. We will select for only the phonics sections, scoring errors that occurred frequently during testing. These patterns help the teacher identify additional needs when working with the student in that specific skill. The tester will select any patterns that were frequently observed and then move forward with the navigation arrow. If the tester did not see any patterns that occurred frequently during testing, they may mark "No common errors occurred." The very last screen before submitting will look like this: Test Submission. Are you ready to submit student responses? Once you submit, you will not be able to reopen the test. If you are not ready, please use the back arrow to review and complete scoring. These assessments will be left open in a tab. Again, these assessments are not timed. If you have a student who needs to use the restroom, you could keep it open as a tab and then come back to it. However, once you select Yes, Submit and go to the navigation forward arrow, the test will be submitted. We will not be able to reopen this test. At that point, the results then go to Tableau. After selecting the Submit button and using that forward arrow, you will see this screen appear. Thank you for completing the core and submitting student responses. The results will be available in Tableau within 24 hours. If you need immediate access to the test results, the tester or teacher from the screen will be able to save a PDF. This is optional. The PDF will look just as the screens did when you were testing. The reds and greens will appear, and you'll be able to see the teacher directions as well and the student responses. This is the only opportunity on the screen to be able to save the test results in PDF format. Again, this is optional. All data will be loaded into Tableau and class and student reports. Now let's take a very quick look at what our reports may look like. Right now, the research department is currently in the process of creating visualizations in Tableau, but the results will look similar to the following images. Tableau will feature a core matrix class report. This is where the teacher will be able to see a list of their students and the skills that the student is working on. From here, we'll be able to identify where the student is in their diagnostic and also progress monitoring. There will be filtering options to allow the teacher to be able to hone in on specific phonics skills or phonological segmentation assessments. Selecting the student's name on the class matrix will allow an individual student report to appear. This provides a student profile of how the student is doing in the particular skill that they are receiving intervention in. This allows diagnostic data and progress monitoring data from core to appear on one screen. Additionally, we will be able to see the error report appear, which would then show which errors the student is making when they are responding to the words in that particular measure. This report will be used for MTSS needs, as well as parent conferences and any other data conversations when we look at the needs of the student. The data in Tableau will align itself to the core cut score guidance that is found in the Assessing Measures book. This allows us to be able to identify different levels, performance levels of our students. This chart in front of us is specific to phonological segmentation, and we can see how kindergarten and first grade have different cut points for benchmark, strategic, and intensive in the different parts, part A, B, and C of phonological segmentation. CUT scores are also provided for core phonics measures. The CUT score guidance allows students to be able to be placed into 3 different categories as well: benchmark, strategic, and intensive. And it depends on the CUT score depends on how many items are in the different parts, depending on which measures were assessed. The CUT score guidance is then used in Tableau to help support the color coding of performance levels and to help teachers identify needs. In wrapping up today's training and before you jump into practice, we wanted to be able to provide the opportunity to respond to a question that might be in your head. Why doesn't a student receive credit for sounding out a word during core? Well, we reached out to core learning consultants and also to ADE to receive a little bit more information and reasoning to support the direction that we are headed. Diagnostics are for mastery, and that means that this provides us that opportunity to be able to really identify the skills needed for that student, whether it is accuracy or their automaticity, to help them move forward. So that is why in our progress monitoring assessments, the teachers will notice that it does layer in an additional component where they are identifying if students are reading as a whole word or sound by sound. Again, our ultimate goal is for students to be able to read as a whole word. That message is communicated by both the core learning consultant quote provided and ADE literacy intervention specialist. Again, the focus is to work on automaticity. It is to move towards the ultimate goal for the student to blend continuously and read it as a whole word on the first attempt. For next steps, practice and become comfortable with the assessment tool and scoring guidelines. You're going to reach out to your dean and/or assessment team for any additional support. Once you have completed the training, practiced, and feel comfortable with the test administration, you will be completing the core training attestation form located on the Screener Diagnostic webpage under the core training section. Every person that completes the training and practices needs to complete that form so that we can mark off that you have been fully trained. We thank you ahead of time for being able to preview these trainings and jump into practice and complete that extra step. We appreciate your support in completing all these steps. Now it is time to practice. Please make sure if using the tools to practice, use the demo, type in demo for all the required fields. And again, once your practice is complete, do not use that submit field. Instead, you're just going to close the tab. Please enjoy playing, and if you have any questions or need for support, please feel free to reach out to your dean, or you may reach the assessment team as well. Additional resources are found on the CUSD Research and Assessment website. This does include a guide to understanding Chandler's assessments, our balanced assessment framework, which has guidance specific to the screener and diagnostic. We also have a data analysis protocol to support you when you're looking at data. We have a screener and diagnostic web page and also Tableau tutorials. If you have any needs along the way, feel free to submit an assessment help ticket, which is on our assessment web pages. And we have a lot more resources that are available to you. If there's something specific that you need, please feel free to reach out at any time.